Welcome. You're listening to the Growortho podcast, presented by HIP. This podcast is dedicated to orthodontists who want to stand strong in their market and be leaders in their community. Now, on to today's show. Mike, super excited to have you on today and be talking about Cloud9.
Hey, Luke. Thank you. Appreciate it. Glad to be here.
Definitely. So for those listening or watching and maybe, they may not know who Cloud9 is, but I'm pretty sure most people will. But specifically yourself and your role there, just take a moment to introduce yourself, maybe give us some background and maybe what even you did before Cloud9.
My role is CEO of Cloud9. I've been with the company just shy of 3 years now. And prior to coming on board with Cloud9, I was Chief Operating Officer at a company called TogetherWork. And then prior to that had spent probably better than 7 years working with another software company called Aptian. And so my background is more focused on what I'll call software company and SaaS company operations. I've of course, had the better part of the last 3 years of opportunity to come up to speed on the ortho space, which has been very exciting. And, I've really come to appreciate the unique attributes of the ortho industry.
Awesome. Cool. And where are you based?
I'm based just north of Atlanta. Our headquarters is Roswell, Georgia.
That's a nice area.
It is. I've been here for about 24 years. Originally a transplant from the Northeast up in New Jersey, but I'd be hard pressed to go back to my hometown these days. I've really come to love Atlanta.
Awesome. You a Bulldogs fan?
Kinda. So no, my oldest daughter is a University of Georgia alumna. So I do support them in respect to her, but I went to school at West Virginia University, and so I'm a lifetime Mountaineer. So we've probably had better years, better seasons, but I'm still a fan no matter what.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's a good time if you are a Georgia fan.
Yes,
they're doing pretty good these days. So
absolutely.
Cool. Well, tell us just a little bit. What is Cloud9 exactly?
So the best way to think about Cloud9 is Cloud9 is a cloud-based practice management platform for orthodontists and multi-specialty orthodontic and pediatric practices. I think historically the view has been that services like ours are more, what I'll call management platforms. But, candidly, the way I think about where we are at Cloud9 and where we're headed is more around becoming a practice optimization platform for orthodontists. And our goal over the long term is to really be a strategic partner for orthodontists in helping them build the most successful practices that they can build. So our goal, our job is to try to enable that as much as possible through our platform.
Awesome. I love that. Yeah, we have a very similar goal in that HIP wants to be a strategic partner for orthodontists to help them grow as well, really a growth partner. So that's awesome to hear that. So how do you guys do that specifically with your software solution? I believe maybe you even have a suite of tools within Cloud9. So how do you do that and be more than just software and really be a strategic partner?
So I'd say really probably three things to highlight there, Luke. First is just by virtue of our platform being in the cloud, right? So if there's one thing that we do very, very effectively at Cloud9 is we scale. And so, when a practice comes on board with us, we have the inherent ability to scale with the growth of their practice, whether that be by virtue of adding locations or adding, additional practitioners and clinicians, or even up to and including, expansion into more of an orthodontic support organization kind of setting where, suddenly you've got potentially, tens or hundreds of locations and practices that have been brought together under a corporate umbrella. Cloud9 as a platform, being in the cloud, scales inherently to support every one of those scenarios. So, if you select Cloud9 as that platform, you know you've got a partner that is right there with you with every step of your growth. So that's the first thing. Second thing, just from a core process and efficiency standpoint, Cloud9 was developed, by Ken and Ann Swinney, if folks know them, and also Reed Simmons was also part of that early management team, and they poured every ounce of their domain expertise around orthodontics into the product. And so, the product inherently enables practices to operate more efficiently, whether it's related to patient flow in the clinic, or it's related to invoicing and receivables management, or chair side, where clinicians are recording treatment card entries and treatment plans. So all of that is really inherently designed to be as efficient as possible and maximize the productivity of the provider and their team. And then the third piece I'll just mention quickly is more recently, we were very, very pleased to announce the acquisition of a company called Toothfairy. And we're in the process right now of working to integrate Toothfairy technically, but it's available on a standalone basis even today. And that is a platform that's really designed to automate and enable the interaction between treatment coordinators and prospective patients. And it does it primarily through interaction via text. And the goal there is to really ascertain where a potential patient is in their buying and decision journey to get to a start. And then based on a brief survey, it characterizes what the obstacles are, what the concerns are of the patient and or their responsible party, and then ultimately provides tailored scripting for those treatment coordinators to more effectively bring those new starts on board more quickly. So, I think probably as well as I do, Luke, that one of, if not the most important metric for growth for practices starts, right? Mm-hmm. And so from that standpoint, our goal in having acquired Toothfairy was to really provide an incredibly powerful tool for our customers to be able to get a better handle on that front end of the process and really help them drive the growth and accelerate the growth of their practices, again, by virtue of leveraging Cloud9 as that optimization platform.
Yeah, that's amazing. And we were talking just a little bit before the recording, about the lead management acquisition process and how focused HIP has become on that as well, because really that first touch and that first communication with the prospective patient is so important. When it happens, how it happens, what's said, and the follow-up with that. And we all know that attention spans are probably lower than they've ever been. And I don't know if that's changing anytime soon. You look at platforms like Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, a lot of others, YouTube, Rumble, whatever that is. And we're constantly just getting bombarded with content, information, messaging. And so I always, I always tell people, hey, we're probably not going to change consumer behavior, but we can change what we do to best accommodate consumer behavior. It seems like there's a lot of alignment there. Now, with Toothfairy, I'm just kind of curious with Toothfairy and Cloud9, are those going to one day, is the goal to be fully integrated, one and the same? What will that look like in kind of a roadmap for you guys?
Yeah, so Toothfairy inherently is in the cloud, but it's a platform that is more oriented for interaction via text in the mobile platform. And so from a user perspective, the goal will be to have seamless connectivity between the Toothfairy module and the rest of Cloud9, right? So there's no double entry, there's no signing on to multiple systems. And so our integration roadmap really focuses first on getting to a single sign-on between the applications, and then ultimately, all of those new patient leads that come in and are ultimately prioritized and tracked within Toothfairy will automatically feed into Cloud9 to populate newly started patients, so that they can get on a financial arrangement and then ultimately kick off the start of their treatment.
Got it. So I know we talked about, or you briefly mentioned, how one of your core objectives and something that Cloud9 does is really increase efficiencies across the practice. Maybe talk just a little bit practically about that, because it seems like most roles in the practice would use the software, the front desk, treatment coordinator, clinical assistant, doctor. How does that kind of increase efficiencies across all those roles in the practice?
I mean, it really varies by specific role, but just by way of example, talk about the idea of patient flow, right? So, when a patient comes into the clinic for a visit, they check in, and what that effectively does is it kicks off a process within Cloud9 that effectively routes that patient through the practice and through the clinic experience, and all along the way alerts the various parties, whether it's the clinician at chairside, or it's the provider, or it's the front desk clerk. Everybody knows where the patient is at all times, and they're provided with a very visual alert, via the light bar and other attributes on the application, so they understand that the patient is ready for them. And at the end of the day, what it really boils down to is making sure that we're minimizing what I call idle time, between patients, because the efficiency of the practice, the productivity of the practice, is really down to managing, honestly, the dead space, right? The dead air that exists between patients, and minimizing that in a way that providers can move from one patient to the next as efficiently as possible, still providing great care, but really, minimizing unnecessary tasks and unnecessary delays in between each patient. So, having that available in a platform that is, again, available and integrated across the entirety of the clinic, makes all the difference in the world, right? In terms of the efficiency of the provider. I would take it a step further in the sense that, again, as Cloud9, we also support multiple locations, so, you're not even talking about efficiency within that. I mean, if you've got multiple providers across multiple locations, all of that is tracked and managed, centrally within the application. And where that becomes important is if you're a large enough practice and you've got a more centralized back office, your staff in one location, or from any location for that matter, can centrally manage and track and process even sort of back office operations, like kicking off auto payments on a given evening or on a given day, and also kicking off things like patient reminders, and engagement with patients on the back end. The more that we can do to automate that, and as much as the system does automate that, the more efficiency you get and more productivity you get out of the practice.
That's awesome. Cool. So let's talk about, for those maybe listening, watching, who are kind of intrigued by this, want to know more. Are you able to talk at all about the cost of Cloud9 and what an orthodontist typically would kind of be looking at if they did want to onboard with Cloud9?
Excuse me. Obviously, the specific cost is going to vary by practice, right? Our costs will typically be structured based on volume. I mean, the larger the practice, the larger the entity, the more of a volume opportunity there is to find some cost savings. But generally speaking, there's, for a newly signed practice, typically that involves migrating that practice from whatever platform they happen to be on today. So there would be some one-time fees related to the conversion of their databases, the delivery of training for their staff members, and then subsequent to that, it's like any other SaaS platform in the sense that it's a monthly subscription fee based on the number of users that you've got. So
Got it.
it's relatively straightforward and really is designed from a pricing standpoint to tie directly to the usage and value that our customers get out of the software, right? And
Yeah.
just to be clear, it's not, um, the core platform in that subscription fee includes all the hosting, the licensing of the software, uh, all the customer support, everything is sort of baked into that core platform price. And for practitioners who've been out there for any extended period of time, how the data accumulates, right? Patient records, image files, documents. I mean, it all continues to grow, um, you know, almost exponentially, and all of that is included in that subscription fee, right? All that is stored in the cloud, within Cloud9.
Got it. So what is the onboarding process like, timeline? What's the journey? If I were, had a practice and came to you guys today, what would that look like in terms of getting me onboarded?
The way that we view onboarding is pretty straightforward. Typically, when a practice has decided to come on board with Cloud9, it's usually a 6 to 8 week lead time in terms of getting on the schedule with our conversion team and with our trainers. But over that 6 to 8 weeks, the first thing that we'll do is we will evaluate the practice and make sure that we understand all the specific settings and all the specific attributes that practice wants to have set up within Cloud9. So Cloud9 as a platform is very, very highly customizable, and there are a lot of features and pieces that a practice will have to decide ahead of time in terms of how they want it set up. So our implementation team works with the practice, whether that's the doctor directly or with the practice manager or some combination of that pairing. But we get all that information ingested first. At the same time, we typically will retrieve a copy of their practice data and begin working on the conversion process itself. So we have, by this time, a very, very deep library of conversion scripts that we've established. So I think there are only very few remaining practice platforms that we have not successfully converted customers from. And when we run those conversions, we do that at a detailed transactional level. And what I mean by that is, I think oftentimes when practices look to convert to a new platform, oftentimes vendors will do what's called a balance forward, where they don't really pull all that historical transaction data. They just take the current balance, call that the new start in the new platform, and then they move forward from there. We don't do it that way. Our a point of pride on many of our conversions is that we will go back and we will pull all of the historical transaction detail and import that into Cloud9, so that from a user perspective, once you're up and running on Cloud9, you have the ability to pull reports and do analytics and review analysis that incorporates transaction level detail going back to however many years of history you have in your prior platform. So we execute that conversion, and then when it comes time to actually implement Cloud9 to go live in the practice, that's typically a day and a half of time in the field where our trainers are physically on site at the practice with the doctor and their team. The data's already been imported into the application, and it's a day and a half of basically intensive training to bring them up to speed on how to operate the practice on the Cloud9 platform. Make sure that we clean up any sort of lingering issues or questions, and then the last half a day, I think, is typically what I'll call a light patient day, where our trainers are still there on site and the doctor and the staff start to welcome patients back into a regular rotation, and they become more familiar with how to operate the platform in a live setting. And then lastly, once the training is done, we actually have a concept called hypercare, where our clients who are newly converted to Cloud9 then have a dedicated resource assigned to them within our organization, and that resource is available to them for typically 4 to 6 weeks, helping to round out any remaining questions and answer any issues or challenges that they may be having excuse me, as quickly as possible to help ensure a smooth continuation of the onboarding process. So I know that's a little bit of a long-winded answer, but suffice to say that we recognize the importance and the criticality of a smooth onboarding process. I know that tends to be one of the biggest fears that practitioners have when considering a move to a new and more modern platform. But we take that very seriously, and we do everything we can to make sure that process goes as smoothly as possible.
Yeah, that's amazing. I can really appreciate that, because I think the onboarding process, just like we were talking about in the acquisition process, that first touch, once somebody buys, and that onboarding process, it's kind of make or break, right? Because you don't want someone to start having buyer's remorse and that type of thing. So, just over here, even at HIP, we've kind of overhauled for the past 3-4 years, really focused on that, making sure that the experience is best. And it sounds like you guys have really taken a hard look at that as well. It sounds very thorough in terms of your onboarding.
Yeah, it's been, it's for me personally, it's been a point of pride because, I know how dedicated our teams are in that area, and every single one of them, comes to work every day with the goal of making sure that our newly signed customers have a great experience. And
amazing.
It's there's no lack of complication when it comes to an orthodontic practice and all the data that's involved there. And so we've got to do it right, and we've got to do it right every time.
Great. So if listeners, viewers want to learn more, possibly get a hold of someone at Cloud9, how should they do that?
Really, I'd say the most efficient way to do that would be to go to a specific URL, and that is cloud9.software/watch-demo. So again, Cloud9, number 9, .software/watch, WATCH -demo. We've set that up specifically so that individuals who are interested in taking a closer look at Cloud9, if you go to that URL, it's simply gated by providing your name and your practice information at a very high level. But really, the goal is to provide a self-guided demo, and then I think it's 10 or 15 minutes, and then there's an opportunity to contact us further, if you've liked what you've seen in that self-guided demo.
Amazing, cool. And I did want to mention also that HIP, we're proud to be a partner and have the partner spotlight on your website as well. So looking forward to working together more and being a partner of Cloud9.
Absolutely.
Mike, well, thanks so much for taking the time to come on to the Growortho podcast. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure, Luke. Pleasure to meet you, and appreciate your leadership and interest in the space, and appreciate the opportunity to be part of your podcast today.
Yeah, most definitely. My pleasure. Thanks for listening. If you'd like to learn more about HIP or any of the topics in this episode, send an email to hello@hipcreativeinc.com. That's hello@hipcreativeinc.com, or jump over to our website at hip.agency.